and for those of you that know me from Fort Dix, I'm just putting together a couple practice videos for the dynamic warm-up that I recommend for, similar to what I would recommend for any workout, but they're specifically focused on the exercises and the training and the actual testing of the German Armed Forces badge of military proficiency. Wearing the German Armed Forces badge shirt from when we did this over at Fort Benning. As you can see, now the events are somewhat different now. So these warm-ups are specifically for the new version of the German Armed Forces proficiency badge. There's three basic areas in the warm-up that we're going to discuss and we're going to get into. This first video is just going to be a discussion of those things, and then I'll go into each of the separate warm-ups. First one is what they call neuromuscular activation. What that is what you're doing is you're basically waking up the system between the head and the muscle. Now, it used to not be such a concern, but it's been found that if you do some of these easy movements, they're not designed to be strenuous in any way, but you're basically sort of turning on and switching on sort of the memory of how to do those certain moves specifically. A good example of that is if you had to just jump up from your chair and start running, those first few steps are going to be somewhat clumsy until you finally kind of wake everything up and you can get yourself going. If you practice some of those movements beforehand, you should be able to jump right into a full sprint. So that's what we're kind of working on with the neuromuscular activation. It also, if you have been training a specific movement, it's sort of an exercise to, again, get that movement turned back on, and the brain will go, oh yeah, I remember how to do that, whether it's firing a weapon or doing a high jump or something like this. It's a good kind of exercise to kind of go ahead and do. It's big with triathletes and professional runners and so forth, doing some of these movements before doing their track meet or their training. The next thing is the sort of traditional muscular sort of joint warm-up. That is going to be seeming somewhat similar to what you may have seen in the past. Again, you'll get some blood going into the muscle kind of thing with some of these movements, but that's actually not a lot of the use for this. It's more sort of waking the joints up. And what happens is it's not really true about the heat sort of thing, but it's an easy way to think about it. But the joints and so forth, particularly if they haven't been moved in a full range of motion, are reticent to actually go into full range of motion, and the sensors within the joints will actually resist the movements until you get a good blood flow and sort of work things out. So the idea is basically to loosen things up, just in the sense of sort of telling those joints, hey, we're going to be using you for a while here coming up, so get ready for that. You do increase some of the blood flow to those areas too, because the body basically shuts down blood flow to your extremities until you need it. So what we're doing is we're sort of waking those areas up, getting the blood vessels to start to open up a little bit. Your heart rate may come up a little bit, but that's really the next phase, which is primarily relates to heart rate and the actual blood in the metabolic system. That's the metabolic triggering stage of the warm-up. Now, again, you might see some of these exercises and go, hey, wait, I thought we were going to do something else for a workout. Isn't this a workout? It is, in the sense that it should work all the parts of your body, even parts that aren't specifically used for that activity. But what it's doing is it's basically causing your body to shut down its passive sort of sitting around the house digesting food and so forth, and actually turning on the things that say, hey, I'm going to have to run from the tiger kind of systems in the body. Now, there are different metabolic processes. If you, for example, go for an easy, slow jog, that are not going to activate those systems that actually make you efficient at the sprint that might come as part of that run. So you want to go through a process that actually drives your heart rate up. If you can, you want to get it to near maximal heart rate, and then it's going to come back down. You're only doing it for a short period of time. And the same thing with you're going to move all your different parts of your body in different dynamic directions with resistance. And how you're going to do that is doing body weight kind of movements in quick succession. Now, I've staged it into several different levels. Level 1 being basically somebody who has minimal experience with doing some of these moves and is uncomfortable, so they can only do a couple push-ups, or can do regular push-ups but can't do a Spider-Man push-up. There's variations in there for you. The idea is not to be a strenuous workout, but just to kind of be hard enough to get your blood going, kind of thing. And you basically do one round of this, and then you should be pretty much ready to go. If you want to do some static stretching, the old stretch your shoulder across, if you have tight spots, that is okay. Just don't emphasize that particularly at the beginning of all this. If you want to do some of that kind of stretching after the metabolic phase, then that is okay, because you've already woken up those joints, you've already woken up the blood flow to those tissues, and so now doing the static sort of stretching, the bending, touch your toes, things like this, if you've got tight spots, feel free to do it at that point. And again, I would even encourage that if you have particularly like a tight hamstring and you're about to go do some running, go ahead and stretch out those areas at this point. So that's going to be the basics of the warm-up. And there again, I use this term dynamic warm-up, meaning you're starting from neuromuscular to joint perfusion to metabolic, and then if you want to add in the static stretching, go ahead.